I'm sure you have a million questions.
Or comments, doesn't have to be questions.
Mimi, I got a question.
Oh, Ian, I didn't know you were here.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm having to do other things as well, but you know me, I'm always here. So my question to DESTA is, and I think we have met previously because I've met you. I work with Linda Moulton Howe, and I think I've met you before when you've been with Grant and at some conference or other, or several conferences. So
I can't see you, but I do recognize your voice.
Sure. Okay. There you go. I'm not on the camera at the moment because I will switch the camera in just a moment. Anyway, my question is. You refer to the sighting that Grant talks about quite a lot, Charlie Red Star. Could you just tell everyone how it's got the name Charlie Red Star and a little bit more about that sighting?
Oh gosh. Well, it was in those days, Grant said that they were called ground lights, right? This is 1974. And Charlie, good question. I don't know if I've ever asked him about that, but Red Star is just because it was red. They were red ground lights that were coming up in Carmen, Manitoba. We actually just went out last year. We had a film crew that is going to put out part of this documentary on Netflix at some point, but they haven't yet. But they came out with us and we went to the exact locations down in Carmen, Manitoba, where Grant actually had the sightings and filmed a bunch of, where he said they were coming up and everything. So it was very, 1974, it was very, in the country in Winnipeg or in Manitoba here, or, all over Manitoba, it's very, the streets are gridded, very straight, and every mile marker, there would be another street. So it's very easy in a grid to know exactly where you were, which mile marker you were. And, that's how everything's laid out there. It's in the middle of the country. There is literally nothing except for fields around there. But we went up and down and saw exactly where he was at mile marker, whatever it was, 12, when he saw the ground lights coming up here. And they would try and go and chase them, and they would go away as they were chasing them, and then they would stop and they couldn't tell where they were, and they would be hiding in the ditch and they'd be flying over their heads and stuff. And it was, like I said, it was the phenomena, it seemed like, was all over the place. Like I mentioned, my grandma saw it in the city, and we're Carmen, Manitoba from here, I think it's about a 45-minute drive from here. And it was there. It was also seen, like I said, at the cabin over the lake and in the city here. So I don't know if there was just something happening at the time, and if there was more ground lights, if it was all actually Charlie Red Star, like the plasma thing. My grandma, followed my grandma down the street at the lake. I don't know if that was all supposed to even be the same thing, or if it was just at that time frame, there was many, many sightings with many of these ground lights, and people were just seeing them all over the place. I'm not even sure, but honestly, I don't know why it was called Charlie, but it was called Red Star because they were red ground lights. So whether you call them orbs now, Grant would say they were orbs now. And they were very close to Grant a couple times, and he tried jumping. It was close enough that he tried jumping on one of them that was coming up under a bridge. Yeah, he went to try to jump to see if he could actually cling onto it. So it was very, very close to him. And they were flying over the car, and, they would try chasing them and trying to figure out which mile marker they were at and going to the next mile and, head them off at the pass kind of thing, so he saw many, 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 many times. And like I said, CTV News, I think it was, actually caught them on camera, it jumping up. And so they figured out, with the shutter speed, taking 3 pictures, like just holding down the shutter speed, they figured out how quickly it was rising. I don't really remember. His book is around here somewhere, but I don't know if I know anything else about it except for that. But we filmed everything that we were doing too, and I'll put it out on his YouTube channel right away as well.
Okay, no, that's good. Thank you for that. That's
there
that's
you
good.
are.
Yeah.
Wow. It looks so sunny there.
It is actually.
We're having a really cloudy day here.
Yeah, we're having some. This is a rare day of an English sunshine, so it's quite good.
Where are you in England?
I'm actually in the Cotswolds in the central England. Yeah. You said that you did dowsing in the UK. Presumably you were dowsing around Wiltshire. Yeah.
I wasn't. I took the class. Oh my gosh, I couldn't even remember this very small town. It was near. I was actually in Ireland, and the guy who was holding the class was in. I'd have to look at it on a map, but it was like near London. I actually had to take a ferry and the train from Waterford and Wexford in Ireland all the way over. It took me a day to get there just to take this class, but he was a fantastic teacher, and I still am in contact with him. Adrian.
Yeah.
But he was in a very small town just outside of London.
Okay, well, I've been to Waterford as well, so I know the journey that you're talking about. So.
It was amazing. I love Ireland. I love England, but yeah, there's lots of Dowsers in England, and we met up with lots of people, and I took many courses from other people as well. But he was great. He has an amazing book, and that course was amazing. Like Healing Your Home is his book, and it is like, it goes everything from like, energy lines in your house that you can try lifting for your health, like for lines under your bed that give people cancer and stuff like that, to how many spirits are in your house, to trying to cut psychic cords and everything. It's an amazing class, and he's a great teacher.
Yeah, I wanted to reiterate as well what you were told and what you probably suspect, that the UFO incident that you had was not a fluke. It wasn't an accident. You didn't catch them out. It never works that way. No,
Yeah.
from my research, they control the situation. So, yeah.
And Grant, and I'll say for Grant too, that Grant only a couple of years ago finally started realizing, like, what's the chance that he went to see Charlie Red Star and saw it, and then started bringing out all these people. And he was also thinking, what's the chance that the one time CTV News was there and pressed the shutter down was the exact same time that the UFO jumped off the ground. So they caught it so they could put it on TV, because they could have taken a million pictures and never caught it. Of course, that's what usually happens. So he was even saying, what's the chance? Like, it's beyond chance. It was very obviously intended. And now he just a couple of years ago, after, from 1974, is thinking like, I think I was supposed to be there. I think this is what got me onto the path for the rest of my life. It was meant to be. It was like a predestined, or however you want to say it, interaction.
Yeah. All of this, I'm sure, is predestined and meant to be. And so, it's interesting and great to be part of that, and then start realizing that you've been drawn into this one way or another. Absolutely. You've been drawn into it anyway.
Absolutely.
So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. I'll hand it back to Mimi and back to someone else a chance.
Well, actually, I just want to open the floor to everybody, whoever wants to talk.
Okay, I have a question. Desta, you mentioned holographic universe. Can you enlighten me about what that means, or what you mean by saying that?
I don't remember how I referenced it, but Holographic Universe is a book by Michael Talbot. The short version of it is that book is an amazing, one of my favorite books of all time. And it basically is trying to lay out reality, how reality is, and if it's a hologram. So the whole book basically goes through examples of studies of things that basically don't make any sense. And so he's trying to prove, like, say, for example, I haven't read the book in years and years, but I've read it many times. And so it's all like little tiny experiments. And he's trying to use these experiments as proof that, reality isn't what we think it is. So one of the experiments could be like, when people are hypnotized, say that there's a guy, you're hypnotized, and I'm standing in front of you, and there's a guy behind me with a watch against my back that you can't see. And then we ask you, what time does the watch say? And you can read the watch through my body, because it's being held on my back, and you could read what the time is. So it's like experiments like that. Like, how do you explain what exactly is happening? You can't see through me, so how could you possibly read a watch through my body, kind of thing. So the book is filled with things that are trying to prove to you that basically that reality isn't what you think it is. So the simulation theory and the holographic universe, for me, are two different very interesting concepts or theories for me that I keep trying to put in my own little box, trying to explain reality, like for myself, you know, like what is actually happening out there? Why is there so many things that are unexplainable that science cannot explain? What does it mean? And what does that mean for the general, our general, you know, concept of reality? Or me personally, like, you know, I don't, you know, for me personally, I'm trying to figure out what's going on. Why is there UFOs? Why do some people see ghosts? You know, why is there all this phenomenon that no one knows what it is, where it's coming from, where is it coming from? Is there multi dimensions? Am I getting messages that I, you know, don't think that are coming from myself? And who is it that I'm talking to? And, you know, what is making up this reality? Why are we here? Why is there multiple, you know, incarnations? Is reincarnation a thing? There's so many questions that science can't wrap its head around and chooses to ignore most of the time. That this holographic universe book and the simulation, especially Thomas Campbell has a book called like The Theory of Everything or My Big Toe. And both of these on sim theory or holographic universe is the only thing to me that is possibly an explanation to all of this, you know, paranormal world and why these kind of things are happening. And psychedelic research is also something I'm really interested in, because it's again trying to get a better grasp on what reality is, what are we experiencing, and why are we experiencing it, and how can we maybe change it. That's my main thing, right? Is like, how can you manipulate reality to create a better future? What's the back door? You know, I always want to know the easiest way or the loophole or whatever of trying to figure out, you know, what's really going on out there. So I don't even remember how I brought up the holographic universe, but it's, if anyone hasn't read it, it's like the greatest book ever.
Ian, you want to come in and explain to me holographic universe?
Yeah, okay. Just bear with me a minute, because I've just referenced it now. It's actually the theory about that we're living in a simulation, that basically we're in a simulation. I'll just read you the preface, basically, of the book, which was actually published, I believe, in 1996. But it's been referenced by quite a few people. And in fact, there's quite a few proponents now for the holographic universe theory. Let me just read you anyway what I've just got up on the screen for you. Just hold on a second. Okay. So there is evidence to suggest that our world and everything in it, from snowflakes to maple trees to falling stars and spinning electrons, are only ghostly images, projections from a level of reality literally beyond both space and time. This is the astonishing idea behind the holographic theory of the universe, pioneered by two eminent thinkers, physicist David Bohm, a former protege of Albert Einstein, and quantum physicist Carl Brebaum. The holographic theory of the universe encompasses consciousness and reality as we know them, but can also explain such hitherto unexplained phenomena as telepathy, out-of-body experience, and even miraculous healing. In this remarkable book, Michael Talbot reveals the extraordinary depth and power of the holographic theory of the universe, illustrating how it makes sense of the entire range of experiences within our universe and in the universes beyond our own. I just wanted to as well mention, it's worth checking in with a guy called Jerry Wills. If you haven't heard of him before, just Google or look for Jerry Wills. That's Jerry with a J and W-I-L-L-S. Now, he's actually had first-hand experience with an actual sacred site in Peru, Amura Mura, I think they call it. And he actually disappeared in front of his new wife, and he found himself inside, let's say inside, it was explained to him from voices, inside a simulation, let's say a space, a void. And he was told that the whole universe, not just our planet, but the whole universe that we currently inhabit, is someone else's simulation, so that they could understand their own universe. So it's almost like a Russian doll inside another Russian doll, that we may be in somebody else's experiment universe, either as real life forms or as, let's say, artificially intelligent life forms that maybe have some sort of soul or spirit connection. I hope that that does it some justice anyway. What do you think, Dan?
Linda did an amazing, I saw her when she did a lecture in Eureka Springs, actually, where Dolores Cannon is from, at that UFO conference. And yeah, I gave her a standing ovation. I was like, that story about Jerry Wills was the craziest story ever. So what it was he ended up in this white room. So he went to a Muramura, stood in front of the, they think it's a portal, disappeared, and was in a white room where there was a booming voice saying, like, what are you doing here, basically. And it explained to him that they were, people, and they were trying to make an experiment to see if they could basically grow, like, say, in a petri dish, kind of like grow life. But it wasn't just life like a petri dish, like bacteria that we would see. It was us. And he said, we couldn't stop you from growing. You wouldn't stop expanding. So we had to put a pin in you. And Linda showed a diagram of like this big red, like, pin, basically. So it was kind of like we were a petri dish that they were just trying to see if they could create a universe, trying to create a world themselves. They were just like people, scientists. This one guy was the scientist, and we wouldn't stop growing. So they put some kind of crazy pin in us to stop us. But he said he was shocked to learn that they were made like the same thing that they made us from.
Right.
They were made. So beings made them, and they wouldn't stop growing and had to put a pin in them, basically, to stop them from expanding, because they would be out of control and the scientists wouldn't know what to do with them. So he said he was shocked that they were in the same situation. They made us and someone made them, and it was like a Russian doll, like Ian was saying. Yeah, that was one of the best lectures I had ever seen. I couldn't even believe it. And in that lecture, Linda actually mentioned Michael Talbot. I can't remember how, but she said that he was regressed by Whitley Strieber, and he was an experiencer. And I had never heard that before. And I ran out and told Grant about that, and Grant, references that all the time, because Linda, we never knew that. But Whitley told Linda that Michael was regressed by him. Sorry.
Yeah, it was Bud. It was Bud Hopkins.
Bud Hopkins regressed Michael Talbot. Yeah, and Linda said in that lecture that he was an experiencer, and none of us had ever heard that. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. It was like my favorite book ever. And now Linda's saying he was an experiencer. So a lot of the information from the holographic universe, we're assuming, has come because he was an experiencer. So whether it came in a download or whatever, but Michael Talbot, he had poltergeist activity, and there's amazing YouTube videos of him talking and saying amazing stories. He was great. Yeah, on YouTube.
Yeah, that's right. And he didn't want to talk about it or reveal that he was an experiencer while he was alive. So it was only after he passed that Linda was able to reveal that Bud had told her that he was an actual experiencer himself. And if you're interested at all, anybody, you can look on YouTube. I think it's Starseed from Tau Ceti. That's Tauceti. And that is the Jerry Wills interview with Linda Moulton Howe that was made, I believe, at the Ozark conference in Arkansas. Very, very good. And in fact, that's always my go-to video if I want to blow anyone's mind. And, we sort of a car journey, and there we go.
Say the website again. Starseed at Tau Ceti.
It's actually the title of the YouTube video that I think that it's referenced to is called Starseed from Tau Ceti, TAU space CETI.
I've looked for that lecture many times. I think I found it once, and then I was never able to find it again. But yeah, same with me. That was like, we were like, oh my God, Linda, it was the greatest thing ever, greatest story ever. I loved it.
Yeah. I mean, the whole story about Jerry Wills is amazing. Anyway, that he was found found by the military, I believe, in a deserted, lonely Kentucky farmhouse during a thunderstorm, and then adopted, and he had these incredible abilities. He's a very tall guy, and he's had such amazing experiences, mostly in Peru, but he's traveled around and spoken on of his experiences, so he's worth checking into. And as Grant would say, it's all about consciousness.
Exactly.
That's it as well.
Well, of course, my problem is that I have made a hologram or holograph, and I don't recall this name being used before 65 or thereabouts. And that's when the laser was invented. And for the first time, with the laser light, was a hologram or holograph created, which is a projected image, three-dimensional image from a solid object. So if you talk about, or anybody else, if, let's say I see a ghost and you say this is a holographic image, I can readily agree with you. And a holographic universe, it's possible that that image somewhere exists, but the universe is real. The moon is real. That is not a holographic image. So
yeah, I know. Well, I mean, but there comes to a point that even if we are we exist inside a so-called holographic universe, then let's not work on just our parameters of what we understand the holograph to be. The whole thing could be much more complex than that, much more in depth than that. Linda has also referenced a guy who was, I believe, he was beaten up and severely injured, had some severe head injuries outside of some sort of nightclub where he worked in the United States, and he started seeing so-called glitches in the makeup of our world. I've also spoken to other people who have also seen, let's say, these almost like pixelated images. They're seeing it in much greater detail or in much greater depth. But you're right. If there is a hologram, then we would assume it has to be a projection. It's somebody else's projection. So somebody else is running the show, and we are therefore part of it. Whether or not we're part of it, like a huge, very complex Truman Show situation, I don't know. But again, it's just another theory of what it could be.
I guess, you've probably seen a holograph. Some years ago, it's quite popular. And you had holographic galleries. There was artworks and stuff like that. Every physics lab probably had a holographic table. Yeah, but I think somehow there is too much put into this holographic basket, right? All of a sudden, everything that we don't physically understand becomes a holograph.
Yeah, it's difficult because we are so matter world oriented. So it's hard for us to understand that. I have seen a very good hologram. In fact, when we were able to travel freely, let's say, I went to Heathrow Airport, and they were trialing a holographic, let's say, one of these welcoming people who would welcome you to the airport or to the flights and tell you which direction to go in. And I was taken at first. I thought it was a real person until I got very close, and then I realized it wasn't. It was a very clever,
right?
Yeah, it was amazing. So that was clever, very good.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what they think that Project Bluebeam is, right? They've been saying for many, many years that they could simulate or like, you know, make a hologram be an alien invasion or a big picture of Jesus projected into the sky for the second coming or whatever. And the military obviously has been using technology like this forever. There's huge concerts, outdoor concerts, just in the last couple of years, everywhere in the States and in Europe, that where they have holograms and they're projecting holograms over the audience. And it's, you know, it's amazing what the technology that they'll let us see right now. It's amazing how real everything looks, but that is obviously not inclusive of the of the technology that they will not let us know that they actually have, which could be something like Project Bluebeam, where they're, you know, could potentially fake an anything happening and we wouldn't know it because, you know, they a lot of the people film even jets in the sky that just like disappear for no reason. And it's like, that's what the, you know, the theory is maybe it was like a hologram of it. They're trying to test to see if everyone thinks that these things are real and how real it looks. But because how else could you explain, you know, a plane just disappearing in the middle of the sky or whatever? So, you know, you don't know how.
Turn off the light. So the first hologram was then made by a priest named Kirchner in the 1600s. And he used a magic lantern and he got his flock together, sit around in a circle. In the middle was a fire, wood fire, and there was smoke. And he aimed his magic lantern image of the devil into the smoke. And of course, with the movement of the smoke, it appeared as if the devil was live, present amongst them, right? And then this was not the end. And after this setting that they had, or whatever, they saw the devil jump from rooftop to rooftop. The same thing. I mean, in those days, there was no electricity, right? There was a lamp inside the projector. And of course, he aimed it on the rooftops. And so they saw the devil jumping from rooftop to rooftop. But it was all an illusion. Just like a hologram is yeah. You know. So, I don't know.
That's amazing.
I think we should be more discerning as to what we are actually talking about when we are talking about
but we can't, but the whole point is we can't tell. So it's the same thing with the simulation, is like they're trying to say virtual reality, which is what we could be experiencing right now. We don't know. It's going to be so real that we won't be able to tell. That's the point. And so if there's civilizations out there, if there's ET civilizations that have been around for 1 million more years than us, this is very easily we already know that this table is not solid, right? We know that the space between the molecules, the atoms that make up this table are not this is not real matter. We know that this is already not what we think it is.
But if you hit your head on it, it's solid enough.
Yeah, that's true. But we know that things like this should not be impossible for us to pass our hands through, because the space in between the molecules on our hand, space in between the atoms on the table, you know, there's huge spaces in between this stuff. We think it's maybe a collective belief system that we think that all these things are real and all this stuff is made out of matter, but it doesn't mean that it is. And it's supposed to be that if there's a civilization that's projecting this hologram in which we live or whatever, that we would never be able to tell the difference of it. And I think that's what we're trying to figure out, is a lot of let's just, you know, say psychedelic research is when people are in these other states, or when you're in a meditative state or whatever other state, you're in a perspective where you can tell that reality is an illusion. And that's the projection of, you know, we know that this is supposed to be a projection of our mind. We can't see physical matter. That's not how matter exists. It seems like it's real, but I'm seeing this table in my head. I'm not seeing it outside of my head. You know what I mean? So this is, I think, this is a set belief system that we all agree on. The fact that table is hard as wood, and I can walk on the ground because my feet can't go through the ground. It's just like, it's a set amount of belief systems that rule this world, that govern this 3D reality, and we all agree to it. We agree to gravity. We agree to these principles of physics and stuff, but there's proof that there is a quantum world, and it's not what we think it is. There's proof that it's not what we think it is. So the invisible world is just as real as the other world. And that's why we talk a lot now about these psychedelic experiences, where when you're in another, whatever you want to say, state of mind, you're seeing things in a totally different perspective than what we're seeing right now. And that perspective seems realer than real. Just like people that are lucid dreaming, just like when you do see a ghost, just like you wake up in the middle of the night and there's a hooded being at the end of your bed, or there's an alien taking you into a spaceship. These different perspectives, when people are in different states of consciousness, or in trance-like states, or whatever you want to say, contact modalities, they seem realer than real. And so where is the scientific evidence then that isn't realer than real? Why do we think this is the only real thing? Because science can't explain everything. Science can't explain anything that we're talking about. This whole paranormal world, UFOs, why do two people stand outside and see two different UFOs that look totally different when they're standing side by side, shoulder to shoulder, husband and wife? They both see two different things. There's too many unexplained phenomena, and that's why these things like the holographic universe or simulation theory or all these other crazy things that we're talking about is like, we have to take a different approach. In my perspective, you have to take a different approach. Science isn't explaining everything. There is a million things science cannot explain, and it's the world we're living in the paranormal world and ufology, and we need to look at, why are we all seeing this other thing? Why does everyone who's taking DMT or psilocybin see machine elves? Why are some people very easy affected by energy? Why do some people see ghosts? Why do some, why are all these things that are unexplained by science happening? And so we have to look into different perspectives. And in my perspective, this is certainly not, this is an illusion. And why have people been saying that from the Vedas, the Buddhists, the Hindus for so long have been saying this is an illusion. I believe this is an illusion. However you want to say it, whether it's a hologram or a simulation, virtual reality, it's a dream. When we go to sleep, we're actually in our real reality, and this is the dream part. Like, who knows what it is, and who knows what the explanation is, but there obviously is stuff happening that we do not know, and that no one can explain to us, that we're all experiencing and having very similar experiences. So there has to be something else, in my opinion.
Okay, well,
who knows what it is, though.
I guess we're in grade 1, and we know the 8th graders, they know mathematics and geography, but we have no idea about it.
Yeah,
I think we're just using the term hologram because we don't have another term for it. It's the closest we can get to saying that things are manufactured or the result of a very clever, complex artificial intelligence aspect. But Des is right as well about the various archetypes that are seen when people are in psychedelic states, that people do seem to see the same type of beings. So there are certain archetypes. Now that lends to the theory that we are given a gateway, or we are seizing a gateway through psychedelic means, perhaps, to see into other dimensions and other worlds, and have an extend our spectrum, and to actually see the same beings that others are seeing. If you reference the works of Carlos Castaneda, and I know a lot of people would say, well, maybe it's all made up or whatever, but that's an example of when the teachings of the Yaqui Indians of Mexico, northern Mexico, would be that the shamans would say, that when you reach a certain state, you will see the same beings. You'll see the same creatures, the same beings, and that's how it is. What's that noise?
It sounds like we do.
Is Rolf a hologram?
Rolf's the hologram now, yeah.
Rolf!
He was an illusion the entire time.
You can mute Ralph if you
That's
want.
the best.
You can hit the mute button.
Maybe you can mute him from your end.
Yeah, you can mute him.
I'm trying to find him. Okay, here we go. Yeah, we do.
The other part
that reminds me of we did an interview with one of our members, and it was called 9 Truths and One Possibility, I think it was called. Do you remember, Brian?
Genesis, yeah.
I remember the title.
Anyway,
Genesis.
Genesis. That's right,
Yeah.
Genesis.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she did a mushroom trip. She was talking about it. She did a mushroom trip, and all of a sudden, these little fellas came out, and they started saying, "Do the Tao, do the Tao," and she's got this music, this electronic music, and you hear that, and that, like, Rolf's thing just reminded me of it. And she said it was like trance-like, you know, and then more of them. It was a chorus of them coming, and so anyway, she made this really great song out of it.
Oh, really? She re-recorded it.
The other part
it was just you know, these little beings that she started to be able to see, and they were making these noises, you know. And but that was also psychedelics, right?
the other part that about the hologram that we're talking about, it's not that it's a convenient theory. It's that to call the universe a hologram, it's that when they take light into the laboratory and they take photons and quantum mathematics into the laboratory, they end up coming with a large conclusion that it's acting like a hologram. So it's acting in a way that there's some kind of, all the molecules you're looking at are generated from something. And that is coming from some space that is quantum by nature. And then your observation of it affects it. So the angle that you're looking at, and so there's a mathematical and laboratory backing behind calling it a hologram, though and that's kind of it. It acts like a hologram. There's something mysterious about the nature of the universe that's affected by observation and affected by the nature of light. And so I wouldn't call it a convenient explanation to kind of like try to bundle things together. Scientists literally are seeing these properties of hologram-like nature to the universe. And when you compile all the things that they're right, because the simulation theory is new, right? The simulation theory is within the last couple decades, but quantum reality has been going on since the 30s, and they really, or the 20s or whatever, and they really, after all the laboratory experiments, after everything they've done and started compiling all the evidence about quantum reality, is when they said, wait a minute, this is the way a hologram works, is when you twist your observation, the universe is affected by that. That is a really weird thing. And light acts these ways. And where's everything coming from? But we all assume molecules are all the leftover molecules of the stardust, is what we assume. But it turns out it's actually being generated from reality. All the molecules are coming out of reality. So there's a whole science that kind of leans towards the hologram theory. So yeah, I just wanted to say that, Rolf.
You don't want to call it the spirit world?
Well, I think that's the scientists calling it the holograms, right?
I never heard anybody calling the spirit world.
Calling it the spirit world?
No, not it. But in the past, people were able to call it the spirit world, the world that does exist, but not all of us have had experience with or understand it. So you call it a hologram, which is, I don't know, I think it's maybe fooling the people. I don't know.
It was a great talk, Desta. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
I want to ask you a question, Desta.
Ralph, I think that one of the points that I was trying to make with Desta that I agree with her is that we call it different things at different times. You know, even in the 70s, they called UFOs something else, right? Than we do now. And like ground, what did you say? Ground lights?
Ground lights, yeah.
Yeah, you know, and I think that we have our language treats things in a different way at different times. And we're talking about the same thing. So you might call the spirits like spirit world in the 1800s, at the end of the 1800s, when people were doing all the seances and stuff. They had certain terminology for it, which now we would maybe science has discovered some of these things, right? And we might call it something else. Or you know, there's less people doing seances now and more people doing channeling, for instance, right? Seances and channeling might be the same thing. Trance medium might be the same thing as channeling, but we just have different words for it at different times. So I don't think that semantics really matters.
No,
right?
It does matter, and I understand it now because of our scientists that seem to want to prove that God doesn't really exist because they can explain it.
That's good. It's a good analysis. Desta, really fascinating. So I was looking on a map. So you said your sorry, was your grandma or your aunt? Was that right? Had a cabin?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Grand Beach, right? Which is Grand
Marais.
Maria. So
Grand
I
Marais.
was across the lake, directly across Winnipeg Beach, is where my grandparents had their cabin, and they saw a UFO. So just the other side. Yeah, and that was in the 60. Again, it was 68. She said actually in between Gimli and Winnipeg Beach. So yeah.
See, I'm so terrible with the lake. I'd even have to bring it up on here. So can you see where Carmen, Manitoba is? Is that on the other side of that same lake? Because I always get Winnipeg Beach, and
there's a lot of communities. It is kind of confusing. So Sandy Hook. So across from Grand Marais is Sandy Hook, and there's Winnipeg Beach there. And then she said it's in between Gimli and Winnipeg Beach was the cabin.
Yeah, see, I don't know why I'm so bad at it, but we had a cottage. It was called Lakeshore Heights, and it was half an hour drive, but really it was like you could have walked there in half an hour even. But it was just right before Grand Marais, which was Grand Beach, and on the other side of that. So maybe Sandy Hook is one of them. There, you know, obviously there's beaches all around the entire thing, right?
Yeah,
the whole entire thing.
Yeah.
But Carmen, Manitoba has to be at some point on the other side somewhere there.
Right. Carmen, that's where Grant was, right?
So Carmen was where Charlie Red Star was filmed by CTV News as well. And that's where Grant saw it. Yeah. And
it's a bit further down. It's a bit further south. Yeah, I actually looked that up too to try and figure out.
Okay. Yeah. I Winnipeg Beach or Lake Winnipeg, Lake Manitoba, and Gimli and Winnipeg Beach. I could never get them all straight.
Yeah, it's really wild. So is the consensus is that it was a UFO flap at the time, or okay, so multiple different sightings, right? Like not just a red star, or was it always typically red? Is that the idea? Or
that's so Charlie Red Star is what they called it on TV, and like that's what everyone was calling it. I don't even know where they, you know, I'm trying to even remember if Grant ever told me where they got the story, or if it's even in the book. I can't even remember where they got the name Charlie, for who made it up, if it was the media or I can't really remember, but it was red. They were always red. The ground lights were always red. Yeah. So whether they were orbs or lights or UFOs or, you know, who knows what they were, but in those days they called them ground lights. They didn't know what they were. And it was a flap, and it was for a long time. like I think Grant was saying for years after. They weren't coming every night for a while, but when he was going there, he was taking people there every single night, and they were seeing them every single night for like 2 years, I think.
Right. Wow. And then you have Manitoba has one of the best proof of alien contact, that guy who got burned.
Falcon Lake.
Falcon Lake, right? That's right. And that's the other direction, isn't it? That's
the other direction. We actually went there too when this film crew was here. We went to a whole bunch of different places, but we went to do a whole thing about all where Grant sightings and Charlie Red Star. And we went to Falcon Lake. Could actually take a horseback ride, which we did because the place where the guy saw the UFO was actually like way out in the bush, like in the bush. And so the only way you can get there, because it's on private property, is to take a horseback ride. So we did a whole tour with the horses to go way into the lake where they were on this big, and it was weird because I don't want to speak wrong, but I think they said only 150 people had ever gone there, which seems insane. But yeah, we got to go and see it. So we filmed the whole thing, and we took pieces of rock from it's kind of like the Canadian Shield kind of rock with like a bunch of millions of pine trees. It's in like the middle of the bush, and the lake right where the UFO, settled there. Yeah, and the guy got radiation burns and everything. Falcon Lake is I think it's the biggest Canadian UFO incident, because he was in the hospital for a long time and had those giant red radiation burns all over his chest. It burned it through his clothes.
Yeah, that's right. What year did that happen again? Do you remember?
Well, I could say 68. I literally just got like the mug, the stickers, the fridge magnets, the keychain. I was gonna put it in my coffee cup today, but I didn't. But yeah,
it's so fascinating. So like usually when there's a flap, there's always, well, maybe at this time, maybe no one was generating theories, but someone always comes up with a good theory about there being a base in the area. Is there any theories about, a base in the lake, or a base off of like wherever Grant was, that town in Grant was? Like any ideas, like anything like that?
I'm not the person, Grant's really the person to ask, but Grant's theory back then was, and it's like, I'm so terrible at this, I really shouldn't even say anything, but I'll just say there's like where they were storing missiles, like nuclear missiles, right on the other side of the border. So we're like 1 hour away from the American border, and these places are south. And so the Americans set up and we have pictures of it. It's in his Charlie Red Star book as well. And we went there and again filmed it as well. But there was like, at that time is when the nuclear missiles were being, bases were right on the other side of the border. Grant went right up to it and interviewed many people around Charlie Red Star time that were saying that the UFOs were coming on top of on the missile base, which was like right beside it. Yeah, so it was, they were coming to see why they were putting, the nuclear missiles in the silo, whatever.
Always a nuclear connection.
Yeah. That's the theory.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, I'm so glad
that makes sense.
It was like the same year, and like again, Grant would like know it, he knows everything off by heart, but I can't really remember the exact specifics, but we're right almost at the border, and that's even closer to the border. And these were all in Grant, not even Grand Forks, it's before Grand Forks, it's like literally on the other side of the border. So they were like very, very close.
I have a funny story about the area. I had a neighbor 2 houses down from me. He's passed on now. And he worked for the Winnipeg post office. He was a duck hunter. So one night he goes out near the lake to check the flight paths of the ducks to build his, whatever the hunters did, you build a shack of some height so the ducks don't see them. But anyway, so he's out there in his Jeep watching for the ducks. And then he hears a humming noise. And he looks in the rear view mirror in his Jeep and he sees there's a UFO landing right behind him. So I says, well, what did you do? He says, nothing. I fell asleep and in the morning when I woke up, the UFO was gone.
Mhm.
You know, his son later on worked for the Canadian Navy.
Uh-huh.
And,
Just a casual sleep, nothing big.
Yeah, exactly. Isn't that funny? That's always the thing, right? You just like, it's like the most terrifying thing ever, but you just
Yeah.
like, for some reason just fell right asleep. It's so
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah, I couldn't understand. I said, how could you go asleep with this thing?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But I guess, yeah, they put him to sleep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
they control the situation. That's what it is.
Yeah.
There's probably more there than it looks. Then,
Yeah. I've had many middle of the nights wake up. There's something in the room, and it's just like normally especially in those days when I was so scared I had the nightlight on all the time, I would normally think that I would be that's what I thought every single day. I would be so terrified I'd literally give myself a heart attack. But it was always like, oh, there's that thing again. And then and then I just fell asleep. And it's like so weird to even remember the story of then I fell asleep, because I don't even fall asleep very easily. Normally, I'm a very light sleeper, and I would never fall asleep if something terrifying was just like in my room, right? But hundreds of times through my life, I'd say, and then for some reason, I just felt like I was just instantly asleep. It's like, isn't that strange? I never normally think that would happen.
So, Desta, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Yeah, you mentioned Dolores Cannon. I'm ordering her book on the 3 waves that's getting delivered tomorrow. And I've been reading Susie Hansen talks about the 3 waves of volunteers coming to Earth, since the 1800s. Just wondering, what's your view on that, sort of that view that many other great experiencers have, that there's sort of a plan in place that's been going on for like a long time, probably since the 1800s, to advance human society, and it's like a gray alien agenda, like it's a positive agenda, that this is a large scale thing, like Richard Dolan describes it as, massive, large scale, and extremely covert as well. But I think of it as a positive agenda. What do you think of the big picture? Because, like Susie Hansen describes it as the whole future of humanity, with the gray alien agenda, the upgrading of our genetics and our consciousness, more of a spiritual focus. And that they've decided, like she calls it a universal governing body. Others would describe it like a federation of planets. There seems to be an organization in place guiding the whole future of the world. It's beyond humanity. So it's a big deal. If this is really the program we're all a part of, this seems to be like a very big issue. What's your view on that? I just want to get your feedback on that.
That's a huge question. I've read Susie's book, of course, as a fabulous book. And of course, I've read all the Dolores Cannon books on those 3 waves. My views change as I have new experiences. So it's very hard to answer that, because at different times I would have different answers. Definitely the 3 waves of volunteers, I connected with that instantly. I've had many messages that I channeled that did say that's what it was. So this awakening is that there's more of us. That's why, and I hate to even say, because I hate to make it sound like there's, I don't know how to word it then, but so I did believe that, I don't know how to say it. I hate to say there's like some of us and we're here and we're part of the 3 waves and we're here to wake everyone up, and that's why we see terrible things and we can recognize them more, and we're more empathic and more than some other people. I hate to say it, because then it seems like we're better than other people, and I hate to make it seem like that's the thing. So I don't really think about it like that or talk about it like that anymore, but it did make sense to me at one time that that's what it was, because it felt like that, right? It feels like we can see that there is a huge disparity in the world, and some of us think about that all the time and are trying to help others and volunteer, and give money to things, or try giving the healing to the earth, or healing other people or places or things, or wartime, whatever. So it does feel to me that, and a lot of these experiencers also think that we never want to come back here. That's a very that feeling is prevalent in this community, is like, I'm never coming back to this place. and the whole star seed and all that kind of stuff, right? There's a lot of people that have had similar experiences, and it seems like maybe that's the deal, that we are very used to being on a different planet that had much better, you know, it wasn't as horrible as a lot of the things that are happening on Earth right now. So we're more akin to feeling that. And so we see this and we feel much worse. So we have, you know, maybe feel more compassion or more empathy towards, you know, what's happening on the Earth right now. Again, I hate to, because that always makes it seem like I'm on this side and I'm, you know, I was never from here. I was from a better planet and we're just here to uplift the rest of you. I hate that part. So I hate to even comment on it, but I do feel like that could be it, right? So it could be that a bunch of us are here and we, you know, stand up for the rights of other people more, or we are healers and we're trying to like invest money into healing people like on energetic levels before, or we do see ghosts and aliens because we are more sensitive to stuff like that. And maybe it's because we're sent here to uplift the rest of the people because, you know, we're trying to get the message out, and all of our friends think we're crazy. And, you know, it's so comforting to find this community of like-minded people, because when we were growing up, all of our friends thought we were crazy. And, you know, because we could see things or hear things or experience things, and we thought of things in a different way than most other people. So maybe we were just planting seeds our whole life to like wake the other people up. So yeah, I definitely agree to all that, you know, for most of my entire life, you know, and I probably still agree to it. I don't like the feeling that, you know, I'm up on a pedestal trying to say that, you know, I'm part of these people that are trying to wake the rest of humanity up. I mean, sounds kind of crazy to me, but I do think that has to be it, right? There's some people that are just stuck in a situation where maybe they're going to have to reincarnate a couple more times, a couple more 100 or 1,000 times, because they are, you know, set in a very low vibration of service to self and getting stuff from the other person. And it's all about getting more stuff for yourself. And, you know, you don't care what havoc you're wreaking in your path kind of thing. And there's some people who are more service to others, who are trying to help wake people up, who are trying to come at everything with a more compassionate viewpoint and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense. And Susie's great, and her book is great, and she's fabulous. And yeah, so is there a bigger agenda in the like, you know, I channel stuff and they say stuff like that, that there's, you know, people, you know, other planets and other civilizations that are trying to help uplift us and are trying to give us, and that's why they're coming to the more sensitive people, to people who they're more familiar with, because we've been, you know, we're a closer connection to them because we've been on these other planets trying to help other planets. And so maybe we come from a different density or vibration or whatever, you know. I definitely think that that's a huge possibility. Yeah.
Don't you think we should be sort of promoting that agenda, just raising more awareness about that agenda? That's actually what's going on. Because in ufology, people can talk about a lot of minor details that go in all kinds of different directions, or talk about things that aren't that important, but this is the vital program that's in place. So you think it'd be good to organize a group of people and just raise awareness about this and draw attention to it, and focus more on that rather than 101 other things. Like, don't you think it's of vital importance?
Definitely. My messages are always that the whole point of this and finally finding people that you connect with is because meditation on mass scales does, obviously everyone knows that that's actually scientifically proven, you know, it raises the vibration and stops violence in the community and all that kind of stuff. It's very obvious that it works. And yeah, my messages are always that you have to get together, because one person does not hold all the pieces to the puzzle. The whole point is we're all given different pieces to the puzzle to kind of like force us to collaborate, force us to come together. And because when it's many minds focused on the same intention with the same, you know, positive outlook on whatever you're going to be meditating for, whether it's a CE5 or whether it's a global peace or, you know, whatever you want, you know, it's exponential. The efforts, you know, will be exponential. So you're supposed to be coming together, sharing with like-minded people, because you need a collaborative effort and everyone to have different experiences to share the information. So you can go, oh, I never thought of that. And, you know, you never thought of my thing. I never thought of your thing. And so we're all kind of like slowly building this gigantic jigsaw of like what is happening and how to make the world a better place, how to uplift ourselves and our communities and stuff. And you can't do it by yourself. You need to, you know, gather in groups kind of thing. So yeah, absolutely. I'm totally